What if engagement isn't the thing that actually drives productivity after all?
You have to be a collaborator. You have to be someone who is interested in helping others, sharing your ideas, not being selfish, not trying to be the star. We are not rational beings. We are feeling, sensing people. I say to you, hello, employee. This is our one question of the week. On a scale of 1 to 5, how happy are you with the support you get from your boss? That feedback is instantaneous. All of that in 24 hours. When you think about well-being, and you say to me, if I work for you, Mark, we're concerned about your well-being, I'm going to go, well, so am I. This is common ground. If I feel that I have a future here, my work is meaningful, I'm going to work my ass off for you. And it's just simple. It's so simple. We don't need 12 questions to get where we need to get to. If you're going to work here, we need to focus on the team first. Before we get anywhere, I have to talk about Wanda because Wanda just killed it. You have to say, before I get anywhere,
there is no growth in comfort and no comfort in growth. Yet the big leaps are how careers are made and how businesses excel. So how do you master not knowing at all or feeling like an imposter? How do you have the conversations that lead to trust and, of course, excellence? How do you take charge of the things that you can control? How do you thrive outside your comfort zone? That's what this podcast is about. I'm your host, Wanda Wallace, and it's time to get out of your comfort zone. Welcome to the conversation. All right, I'm going to bet that the percentage of your workforce that shows up as disengaged on your annual or biannual engagement survey is probably flat and maybe even declining. At least that's what it looks like in most of the companies that I'm dealing with. And over the last few years, you've probably tried to do a variety of things that bring those engagement scores up, and I'm going to bet that you're not seeing a very meaningful shift. And that is true whether you're running a moderate-sized group or whether you're running an enormously large group. We're just seeing a downward trend on the engagement survey questions. Now, one of the things we want to ask today is, what if we're measuring the wrong thing? What if engagement isn't the thing that actually drives productivity after all? So then what does that mean we should be measuring? And more importantly, what can we do about it that's going to make a substantial difference? And by the way, the difference matters to productivity, customer satisfaction, retention, and the things that make a difference in how well the business runs. So my guest today is Mark C. Crowley. He's pioneering leader and best-selling author and leading a revolution in the workplace industry. I think you now know why we're talking about this. 25 years in a competitive financial services industry, lots of national roles, leader of the year, and a great leader in many, many ways. And his book, Lead from the Heart, in 2011 was a big hit. And he now has a brand new book called The Power of Employee Well-Being that advances his vision and demonstrates what he believes really helps teams thrive and fuel organizational success. So working across 175 countries, sought-after speaker, fast company contributor. What more can I say? Mark, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you, Wanda. I love how you set all this up.
It's good. So why? I always start with why. Why do you care about this whole thing called engagement and well-being?
Well, what I really care about is how to install a more effective way of leading people in our workplaces, one that's aligned to human nature. So historically, we've always believed that the best thing to do for owners, shareholders, etc., is to pay people as little as possible, squeeze as much out of them as possible, and assume that they don't want to work hard. And so there's just been this massive reversal in a couple of ways. The first one is that people do want to fulfill themselves through work. And so they do want to commit themselves, but they also want to have their needs met through work. It's no longer just about a paycheck the way it used to be. And so in many respects, businesses never really responded to that, to say, people are looking to get much more out of work. And if we can support those needs, we can infinitely improve their productivity just by supporting them. We don't think that way. But the other is that I manage people very differently. And you can see cleverly have my books behind me, but the red one was the very first edition of Lead from the Heart in 2011. And I rewrote it in 2023. But the premise of that is that we are not rational beings. We are feeling, sensing people. Feelings and emotions drive up to 95% of our behavior. So if we understand that people are that way, then why are we going, hey, if we work really hard, we're going to get our customer service score from 3.9 to 3.92? And people are like, what does that matter to me? It doesn't matter to me at all. What matters is supporting people in ways that make them feel supported, valued, appreciated, growing, these kinds of things. So as a setup, I started paying attention to research that was coming out that was demonstrating that well-being, which completely is aligned to everything that I'm talking about and have been talking about, there's metrics and studies that are showing that as simple as asking people, how did you feel at the end of this week, translates directly into their productivity. So if I asked you, Wanda, how do you feel at the end of this week? Let's just assume this is Friday. How do you feel? So you've got a bright green emoji, you're happy as can be. And you've got a bright red one and you're really unhappy and almost angry. And then everything in between. They can calibrate this to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do numbers, measure these metrics over time, and designate whether or not you have a content workforce or not. But depending upon what those scores are, drives directly, like they did this in a call center where they showed that the number of calls people took increased, the number of sales increased, the amount of time that they spent with customers decreased because they were more efficient, they were more focused, they were interested in moving on and getting to the next customer. All of their metrics massively improved when people said, I'm really happy. And the interesting thing, one, is that they didn't say, hey, if you're going through a personal situation, like, you might be in a bad marriage or something like that, or you got a problem with your kids at home, please take that out of your consideration. They didn't. They just said, holistically, how are you feeling? And so if it's as simple as that, and I know we're going to get to the engagement thing, it's like, why are we asking 12 questions and playing whack-a-mole with what's really driving engagement when all we need to do is simply ask people how they feel about certain things?
Yeah. I've secretly believed for years that the 12 questions, the Gallup wonderful 12 questions, are really just an approximation for how people feel about being at work. And that people respond with a generalized comment. Because you're not asking me how I feel this week about how upper management has communicated with me. You're asking me how I feel for the last year about how upper management has communicated.
Right.
Okay. So that's a general feeling. That is basically, I'm happy and not happy. I've often thought that's what we were getting out of the engagement. So I want to come back on something that you said. You said that people want to have their needs met. So first off, I completely 100% agree with you that we are emotional beings. We make up our mind, we take actions, we behave according to emotions, and then we justify it after the fact because we know we need to be rational.
100%.
And that if we'll ever tune into understanding what those emotions are, we can actually unlock an awful lot of human behavior and human dynamics. But you said people want to get their needs met through work. All right. So there's a current backlash coming from lots of leaders that I'm talking to about the youngest generations, Gen Z, not Gen Alpha yet. They're not quite in the workplace, who don't seem to want to work hard, who don't seem to want to kind of give it their all. What's your view of what's happening there? Are we right about that judgment or wrong?
I don't think so. It's not to say that they're not having that experience. I think they're not managing it well. For one thing, I think hiring, you can suss that out. Looking at somebody's resume and seeing what they've accomplished and asking people to describe how they work and what they do day to day in their previous jobs and how they've worked with their previous managers. And, tell me what bugged you about your last job. It tends to elicit, well, I never get what I want. And, you start to go, oh, okay, I'm sensing somebody who's going to be difficult to work with. Right. So I think we need to do a better job there. But it's something that happened generationally. It's interesting. I mean, we're both of a certain age where it was when we started working that whatever companies told us we were having to do, we did it. And we didn't feel like we had any option in it. It was like, this is the job, this is the deal. And by the way, no matter how bad the treatment was, unless they were, putting flames under our feet, we stuck around. And so over the past several generations, at least the last two, you have people who are kids watching their parents be tortured at work and coming up with the conclusion that I don't want that. So I'll give you an example. My son graduated from Cal Berkeley. And when he came home after graduation, we were having breakfast one day, and I said, let me set this up and say that I had a corporate experience. I started off at the bottom and made it up to the top over a 20-year period. And so I said, what are you thinking about doing? Like, what do you think your next step's going to be? And he did very well in school, and he's always been a, really smart kid, hardworking. And he said, well, I sure as hell don't want to have your career. And I said, you realize you came out of school without any debt, right? I just paid for your school. And he goes, yeah, that's not what I'm saying. I was the best man at his wedding, so don't judge him harshly. But it was the first instinct that I had that he was paying attention the whole time and watched how much sacrifice and how much of my soul was taken away to succeed in these traditional workplaces. And so then you have Gen Z, and they live through COVID, and they're like, I could die. Like I could be, like life is going to be short. So I think what we're dealing with is one aspect of this is that people are looking at work very differently. Where, I used to work like ridiculous hours and then, commute home and all that. You're looking at like a 15, 16-hour day, and then you do it again and again and again. And I was rewarded for that for some reason, but, in some ways, but not completely. You're giving away a big part of your life. And I think what we're trying to realize is that all of us, actually, not just Gen Z, is, how do I work, but also have a life? So what I would say to managers, particularly the people that you're talking to, is just set targets. Say, this is what I'm expecting. This is what the job is. This is what I'm expecting. So I'll support you, and I'll care about you, and I'll coach you, and I'll teach you, and I'll give you opportunities. And those are some of the needs that we're meeting. But for you to succeed here, you're going to have to deliver. Like it needs to be some straight talk, because I live near the university where I went, and I see some of these kids, and I have conversations with them, and I'm like, Jesus, like they're really smart and they're really ambitious. So, it depends upon the job, but I'm not convinced that, every generation goes, oh, look at these slackers. They said the same thing about Gen Y. So I'm not as cynical about it.
I agree with you. I think some of it is, that when you're young, there's a slightly different sets of priorities and needs and ambitions and a whole bunch of things. A lot of stuff to figure out. And I think this younger generation wants to be managed well. And I got to say,
that's it. That's
good
it
for them.
Well, but then the burden is on us. And I mean, I so love that you said this, because it's so much easier to say those kids are a problem. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then the other guy that's sitting there listening to him's going, hell yeah, they're problems. I'm having the same problem you're having. And what we're not willing to do is to say, what if I changed? What if I rethought how I approach this? Just sit down with these guys, bring them together and go, if I could manage you in a way that would make you inspired to be here, what would it look like? And just pick one or two of them. You don't have to transform yourself. Just, you know what I mean? You don't have to go, I'm a totally new person, but just pick up one or two things and see what the response is. I guarantee you, people are like, I didn't think he would do that, or she would do that, and so we're the ones who need to change if we're going to try to get a different outcome.
Yeah. I say to managers all the time, I don't want to talk about the generational differences because that isn't the focus here. But I say to managers all the time that you're going to have to learn to manage differently than you were managed.
Completely.
And by the way, it's good for all of us. So, okay, fair enough. We're on that one. Let's get back to this topic of engagement and well-being. So I made the bold statement at the intro that I think engagement is kind of just flat and declining and we're not making any progress on it. What are we getting wrong about these engagement measures?
A lot. A lot. Well, for one, I find this sort of remarkable, and I felt like a Judas when I was writing the new book, that in 2013, I went to Gallup on a whim and ended up with their chief scientist and just said, hey, do you guys have any research that might be able to support my thesis? And he goes, well, we're just about to come out with the American Workplace Study, and engagement is ridiculously low. And I go, well, how low? And he goes, 30%. And I go, that's like ridiculous. So he goes, I said, well, I'm writing an article on this, so would you let me publish it? And he goes, sure. So my Fast Company article in 2013 was the first one to say we have a crisis. And you would think everybody was like, oh my God, only 30%, then what an upside we have. If we could get it to 50, 60, how much more productivity and how much retention and all that, right? So now we're in 2025, and the numbers that I reported in that article in 2013 are the same there. So we could end the conversation there. I rest my case. Like, if you want to argue that, oh no, we've taken it seriously, show me. Where have you taken it seriously? Ask your employees if you've taken it seriously. You said, we take an annual survey, which is patently stupid, right? Because it's all in arrears. And then they go, well, I remember back, 11 months ago when you did. And, and so people are like, we're not going to deal with that. That's old news. And so I think, just to be concise here, two major things. One is the companies never really took it seriously at all. Wall Street didn't care about it, so CEOs didn't care about it. And then they started to look around and they were like, hey, we're still producing and we're not losing all that many people, or we don't really care if we're losing that many people. The company is surviving without engagement being high. So wink, wink, do your surveys and get on with it, but we're not going to take it seriously. And the way that I know that is that no manager was ever held accountable for it. So they didn't go, hey, Wanda, I'm looking at your numbers here and you've got low engagement, but people really don't like working for you and we need to work with you to fix that. No one ever got that. So if I'm on the employee end and I'm writing, pardon me, I'm going to reverse the roles here. This is you filling out the survey and you're like, I work for Mark Crowley and he's toxic. He's unsupportive, uncaring. And when things get really bad, he just turns into fear and intimidation. And I'm not the only one who feels that way. And these are supposed to be anonymous surveys, but it never gets back to me. My boss never comes to me and says, Mark, you got to change here. So people just look at that and they're like, pardon me, I'm speaking the vernacular here, but screw this. So they've become cynical about it. Like, you don't really mean this, so I'm not going to give you any feedback. You don't do anything with it. I think these are sort of the big reasons why. But the big one is, if it hasn't improved after 12 years, Shakespeare said past is prologue, you can pretty much predict next year it's not going to be better and better and better. And we've been talking about this now for 20 years.
Right. All right. Fair enough. For the record, I do have some clients, some fairly large and financial services clients who do take their measures seriously. And if your numbers start to drop or you don't stand up relative to the company norm, somebody is calling. Now, the question, though, is, can you as a manager actually take an action that really lifts engagement? Or are you just taking actions that tell everybody you're going to be in deep trouble if you don't give me better scores next year?
Well, unfortunately, people do that. They know the surveys are coming out. And so they have a meeting and they go, don't be put down bad scores. We don't need that right now. And they intimidate people into that. So there's this gamesmanship that's going on, right? And it only happens at best twice a year. So they can navigate that, So just to be clear, I'm not anti-engagement. When I wrote that article, I was all on board with it. It's just that, so you mentioned that we discussed that there's 12 questions. So, okay. So let's say you're taking a survey and one of the questions is, I have a best friend at work, which is a big indicator of well-being, by the way, but it's also a big indicator of engagement. And there's another one that says, I know what my assignments are. I have clear direction and all the tools I need to succeed. So now we get the engagement scores, and your engagement scores are low. Do I go, I have to help Wanda get a friend, or do I have to go and figure out what she's supposed to do because she doesn't know? I don't know. We never get the detail of that. All we get is the engagement number. And so companies just get caught up. I have a friend of mine who tells me that he works at this company and they're like, we got to get this up to 43.4. We're in trouble. And I'm like, what's the number? It's not the number. It's how people feel day to day. Do they feel supported? Do they feel cared for? Do they have a boss that knows who they are outside of work? Right? Do they advocate for them? One of the things interesting that Gallup has shown is that people feel they compete with their boss, or vice versa. Their boss competes with them because they're threatened by them. So you look at this and you just say, we're picking the wrong people for management, and we have no real clarity on how to improve them with a biannual survey that goes out to the whole company that no one's ever held accountable for.
Right. Well, also that survey I collected on day one. It takes 3 months usually to process it.
Correct.
It takes a month to distribute it. At a minimum, it's 4 months later. If there was a problem 4 months ago, it's too late for me to address it. That's my complaint, as we need more regular, steady information on what to do. All right. So you advocate for well-being. Why is well-being a better metric in your
All
opinion?
right. So one thing you've said twice now that I really want to amplify is that what I'm hoping with this book is that people go, hell yes, it's about time that we stop talking about engagement. Whether they agree with it, whether they think that, that the metric is valuable, it's a failed system. That the system has not worked for us. It hasn't improved anything, hasn't helped with people staying, hasn't helped with people being content and working in their jobs. If it was, we'd see the numbers increasing. So put that aside. I'm hoping that people are like, this is great. Like we got to move on. So why well-being? It goes to one of the most important things that you just said, which is that I hear that. What is so important is that the feedback be timely. So there's technology now, and I'll come to why well-being in a minute, but let's talk about how to measure it. I can send you a survey, and all of the people in my team, my organization, and I could send them a survey like with one question or three questions, no more than four, something like that. But basically, let's just say I say to you, hello, employee. This is our one question of the week or our biweekly survey. How, on a scale of 1 to 5 or bright green to bright red, how happy are you with the support you get from your boss? That feedback is instantaneous. So the way the technology works, that feedback in a day. So Wanda, you have 24 hours to figure it out. 24 hours later, all management has is the whole survey of the company about how they feel about how supportive their managers are. So if it's green, you go back to the managers and you say, we just got great feedback. You're doing a wonderful job. People feel very supported. Congratulations. That's the objective of the organization. A+ report card. If it's in the orange or in the red, then you start to say, what's causing it? What are people not getting? And who are the people that are getting the low score so that we can coach them up or coach them out? All of that in 24 hours. So you have that feedback. Management, if it's intentional, can recalibrate and say, okay, we just had a really rough month here. We understand why people don't have a good sense of well-being. How is it compared to the other times? You can be intelligent about this, not overreact to it and go, oh, people aren't happy this week. We need to have a party. Like, that's not what we're saying. But the other question you ask is why well-being? The metrics, the research is so astonishing that it all boils down. And by the way, isn't it the questions that we're asking people? Do you have a friend at work? Do you have a supportive manager? Do you feel appreciated? Those are all elements that 12 questions, if you boil them down, are really just asking, how do you generally feel about your work experience, right? And so the science is really clear. And I went to Oxford in December and met with the Jan Emmanuel Deneuve, who's an economics professor at Oxford, and he has done this incredible work that basically shows it's direct and it's consistently direct. And not only is it consistently direct to the extent that an individual, so you are giving green every week, I can look at your performance and see that your performance is improving because it's green every week or at a very high level. But what he's also said, because he's an economist, is that it translates all the way into the organization. The other point that I think is really important. So what I'm saying is it drives organizational success. It doesn't just drive individual success. But when you think about it, engagement was never something you and I as employees cared about. Our employers wanted us to be more engaged because they wanted us to be more productive. I never cared about it, right? You cared about it as a man, right? When you think about well-being and you say to me, if I work for you, Mark, we're concerned about your well-being, I'm going to go, well, so am I. So this is common ground, right? And so when I'm feeling a sense of well-being here, I want to reciprocate to you. If I feel that I have a future here, my work is meaningful, I have somebody who genuinely knows who I am and can make some accommodations for that, whatever that looks like. If they appreciate me, if I feel safe in that environment, if I just enjoy getting up in the morning, I'm going to work my ass off for you. That's why well-being. And it's just simple. It's so simple. We don't need 12 questions to get where we need to get to.
It's interesting. So I don't know if you know the research of Teresa Welburn, an academic in the U.S. She was at Michigan. She's now, I think, at Alabama. She has a company called the EE Pulse. Teresa has been arguing for decades that engagement is the wrong number, that what we need to look at is employee energy. What's my energy level? And she says everybody has an ideal energy level that puts them at their best performance. And it varies profession by profession, function by function, person by person. And then what you want to say is, what's your ideal energy level on a scale of 1 to 10? And then where are you today? Is your energy down, or are you overexpending your energy? And you look at the gap. The shift in the gap tells you whether people are in the right space to do their most productive, most effective work or not. It strikes me that that is just another way of getting at the same concept that you're talking. How do you feel about work? In effect, is what you're asking. What do you think?
Well, it's a parallel metric, right? That's what you're saying. And,
Yeah.
and I agree with it. The why I'm going to lean into, rather than defend, lean into well-being is that I can still ask you the 12 questions. So in other words, rather than get into your energy and find out how I can elevate your energy, I can find out how you feel about your boss. I can ask that question of whether they're supportive and caring and those kinds of things. I can find out how you feel about the benefits. I can feel that you have, I can ask you specifically, is your work meaningful? Do you feel your work is meaningful, right? So I can drill down and ask these questions. I'm just asking them routinely, but the drill down gives me
The source.
greater specificity than I think
Yeah.
the energy
Yeah.
question does.
Okay, fair enough. In fairness, Teresa, when they do this at EE Pulse, what they have is they have an open-ended box comment at the end of, they just ask the two questions. They ask then open-ended comments, and then they do a word search to say what is really showing up for people. You know, is it about the last corporate announcement? Is it about the change? I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that you can find out quickly are making a difference. And I'm not here to debate which metric. I think what's interesting is this focus on well-being. So let's shift this. So well-being gets at the energy I have at work, the commitment, engagement I have at work, the willingness to be fully 100% present, to give my full attention to the work that I'm doing, to feel like I'm actually going to help my team members. If I'm in a poor well-being place, it's hard to do any of those. So I would argue with that one. What I want to know, though, now is, so what do I do about that? All right. So employee well-being is an important metric. I can get it on a regular basis. We can look at it. We can see where the pockets of problem, what are the problem, and intervene on it. Check. Now, suppose the scores are low. What do I do as a manager?
So I'm going to use a language that I hate when people on my podcast say it. But in my book, I have the second half of the book. Principally, the book is a primer for managers on. So you're wondering, how do you drive that? What do you specifically do to elevate employee well-being? Well, that's what the book is about. But I'll point out two. So the first one goes to something that we talked about at the beginning, which is this idea that maybe it's us that needs to change. Maybe we need to evolve in how we manage. And so it starts with knowing thyself. It's really doing a deep diagnostic on yourself to discover, what are your impulses? What are your influences? I had a friend years ago say to me that most people operate out of their childhood selves most of the time. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so accurate. And we don't realize it. But we get into a conflict with somebody. It reminds us of some stupid thing our brother did 30 years later. And we're having an argument with somebody that's not their brother. And, we don't even realize it. And so but it's also just getting into motivations and what pleases you and what triggers you. And it's work. So I'm saying start there, like know thyself, because if you don't know yourself, you can't manage other people effectively. And that, so it goes into a lot of depth around that. But here's the most interesting thing. So if I were to say to you, on your best guess, what is the number one driver of employee well-being? If you know the answer from whatever pre-work you've done, tell me. But if you haven't seen it, take a guess.
What is the best driver of well-being?
The number one driver, the most important thing. So for your audience, if you want to just do one thing, work on this, what would it be?
Okay, I do know the answer to this one, and I happen to agree with the answer. So I believe it's belonging. It's belonging.
So, when offices reopened after COVID, so 2000, in summer of 21, people were clinging to working from home. Gen Z was like, hell no, I'm never going back in an office. Don't ever drag me there. This is stupid. We've proved that this can work remotely, and I don't want to go back. And so I wrote an article in Fast Company and said, what you're describing is unsustainable, that we are human beings and we need to be having regular connection with one another. And we get into mental illness and mental health problems if we don't. And the first time I've written like 30 articles for Fast Company at the time, and the first time I got hate mail, people were like, who the hell are you, corporate shill? Like, arguing on their behalf. And I was like, no, I'm not arguing on behalf of anyone. I'm just saying it's human nature. Well, it's interesting. Gen Z, there was just a report that just came out the other day that showed that the majority of them don't want to have full time. They need to be in the office. They want to be in the office, but it took us a few years to kind of get there, right? So, but the attitude of I need to have friends at work is really waning. Like, if I work with you, it's like, I'll work with you, but I don't need to know you. I don't need to care about you. I don't need to have a friendship with you. And I don't really need to collaborate with you. I mean, to the extent that I have to. Whereas if there's true belonging in an environment, you're starting off with, Amy Emerson calls it psychological safety. I call it psychological and emotional safety for obvious reasons, right? It's how people feel generally. Am I accepted on this team? Do people value me? Do they come to me and ask for help, right? But it's also, and there's been, Daniel Coyle did this great research on the high affecting teams. And what he showed is that the common denominator is almost like a family orientation where they have each other's backs. And that resonates so strongly with me because in managing my teams, I used to say, if you're going to be on a team that I'm leading, you have to be a collaborator. You have to be someone who is interested in helping others, sharing your ideas, not being selfish, not trying to be the star. And so, Coyle and others have shown that the top performing coaches in major sports, whether it's collegiate or professional, what they're looking for isn't just somebody who can play the game. They're looking for somebody who at the last minute will pass the ball instead of thinking that I'm going to be the star and taking when the pass makes more sense. And I think that's it. Is that if I were a leader today, I would be saying, how do I create a team that's so cohesive that they're not backbiting and going, well, Bill didn't do what he was supposed to do. And you have all that kind of tension all the time. If you can knock that out and say, we're going to have our days where we're going to be annoyed. People are annoying. We all annoy each other intentionally. But beyond that, if you're going to work here, we need to focus on the team first. So if you're recognizing performance, you don't go, well, before we get anywhere, I have to talk about Wanda because Wanda just killed it. You have to say, before I get anywhere, the team killed it. And then, oh, by the way, now I want to talk individually. Wanda, you were one of the people who were just tremendous this month, but start there. So belonging is an incredible, and it goes to feelings. Do I feel safe? Do I feel like like I'm looking forward to seeing these people day to day? So I'd start there.
Right. Do I matter? Is my voice really heard? Does the boss care what I think or not care what I think? Do my peers,
do my colleagues,
care or not care? And granted, some people want really tight belonging and some want looser belonging, but there's that sense of connectivity to the team that makes a massive difference in how much people put forward of themselves on the team. If I don't think you care about me, want to hear my opinion, then I'm not bothering. I'll give you part of my time, but yeah, not my full brain power. Okay.
Part of Denev's
And
research shows that, we hear this adage that people quit managers, they don't quit companies. He said there's truth in that. He goes, but the primary reason people quit is because they're quitting their colleagues. They're quitting because they don't feel like they're a part of something that matters to them.
yeah, and more importantly, the reason people stay in a bad working situation where the workload is really over impressive or all things are going wrong, you deal with a lot of problems, and maybe even the manager is not that great. You stay because of your colleagues.
Connection,
We've proven
which is
that
the heart,
over
by
and
the
over
way.
again. Yeah.
It's all about feelings. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I feel like I'm a part of it and I don't want to let my colleagues down. Okay. All right. So now that comes to this notion of the bestie, the best friend at work, and why that. So I want to hear it from you. Why do you think that sense of a best friend? Is it just this connectivity and belonging that we're talking about, or is it something deeper?
It's both, right? It's both, and I think that it's an element of belonging that's important. But we spend so much time at work that if you don't have somebody, you can go, my husband is driving me nuts. Or, I just had a meeting with my boss that was so bad. Or do you have meetings like that? And they go, yeah, we all do. You're fine. Don't worry about it. He'll forget it tomorrow. Like that it's reassurance. It's like knowing that somebody cares about you. It's really deep. And I think it's a problem when we were just talking about this, that there's this attitude within Gen Z that I've seen in research that shows I don't really care. I've got friends outside of work. I think COVID did this to us, that it convinced us that somehow we have enough friends outside of work, which I personally think is preposterous because you're spending 10 hours a day at work. You can't make that up. Like, what are you going to do? Stay up till 3 a.m. to go connect with a whole bunch of other people, right? So if you're not making it happen at work, and so I think managers need to make this intentional. I think they need to have social hours and not like, hey, we're all going for drinks after work. We're all going to have lunch together. We're all going to have coffee together, like work time, not after hours where people are like, I have a kid to get to. I don't want to make my boss mad, but I can't go for a drink. It's like, do it during the day. Give people time to just talk to each other and build relationships. A lot of it's that.
I've suggested to several managers who are struggling with this idea that they start pairing people and just, randomly move it around. But like we're having lunch and, the three of you are sitting together, the three of you are sitting together. So we have a conversation. I also so I'll back up with a piece of data too. Gen Z clearly has the highest loneliness scores we've ever
right,
seen.
Right.
Okay.
I mean,
so
this
I
is
rest
what
my
I was
case on that one.
saying, 4 years ago. Is like, it's fulfilling it. No question. There's also studies that show that there's a direct connection to John Gottman has written a famous book about how marriages stay together. But there's other researchers, people that I've met that have extraordinary research that show that there's the same ratio. So Gottman says it's the Gottman ratio. It's 4-to-1. You have to have 4 positive emotional experiences a day for every 1 negative one. You just get up in the morning and you look at your clock and you're like, I'm running late. Negative emotion, right? Get in your car and there's traffic. I'm going to be late. Negative emotion. So life just hands them to you. So we have to kind of come back and say, how do we create an emotional experience for people where they get this 4-to-1 ratio? But what's so amazing is that what they've shown is that, and I think it's the University of Pittsburgh research that showed that there's this linear relationship. So like if you're 5-to-1, like if you're just marinating in positive emotions, your mental health is just completely thriving. But as you start getting down here, if it's like 3-to-1 or 2-to-1, sort of like that, I try to remember this guy's name, Roy Baumeister. So he was in this job. He was young, and he started to track his happiness day to day in his job. And he did this for a couple of months, and he came to the conclusion that he was happy 2 out of every 3 days. So a 2-to-1 relationship. And he immediately quit, which you're like, wow, why would you quit? And he quit because he goes, it's unreasonable for me to experience a third of my life where I'm unhappy. And so he's the one who presented this research that shows that if you're not getting at least a 4-to-1 ratio of positive emotions on a regular basis through life, but especially at work, that your mental health is going to deteriorate really severely. So
Okay.
that's why this is true.
I can imagine a whole bunch of people saying, okay, my mental health is deteriorating and now I know why and I better quit my job. Before they do that, I have certainly coached people through some very difficult moments in time by getting them to pay attention to the small positive things that are happening. So I think there's some attention that can help. But what do you find managers can do that increase people's positive emotions on a day-to-day basis?
Show interest in them. How are you? I was giving a speech in Washington, D.C. So I flew, 2,500 miles, big company. And I was supposed to speak for about an hour. And then the president of the company, the CEO company, was going to come out and interview me on stage with all hundreds of people, right? Well, I'm in a hotel literally across the street and I pick up my phone just to see what time it is. And I see this message saying that my brother had died and he died alone. And so the San Diego coroner's office said, you need to call us. And I wasn't expecting it. Didn't know this was going to happen. And so I was like, okay, what do I do? And I thought, I came all this way. I'm not going to disappoint these people. I'm going to go, man up and do my speeches and then go home and deal with this. So I went in and did this little workshop and then I spoke for an hour and I was like, I managed through it. People were like really happy. And then I got on stage and they had like this formal thing. The CEO was already talking. And then she goes, let's bring Mark back up. And I come up and I'm getting all this applause. And sitting right next to her in a little director's chair. And I look over and she goes, how are you, Mark? And I go, I'm great. And she goes, how are you really? And I was like, oh my, like I couldn't lie, instantly, like remembering it, it was like, Jesus, why would you ask me that question? Because I could pull it off. But she's learned to do that so that people tell her what the truth is, because we all have bad days. We just don't know when people are going to have them. So I think it's just showing interest is one. The other is that we have this sort of perverse feeling about recognition and appreciation. It's almost as if like we have to go into our wallets every time we thank you, right? So you work for me and you come into my office and you go, hey, that big project you gave me a couple months ago? And it's due in another month. And I go, yeah. You go, it's done. It's great. And I'm like, you got it done a month early? Like, that's fantastic. Congratulations, Wanda. How did you do it? Tell me how you did it, right? So I've had this emotional experience with you. You're feeling fulfilled. You're feeling great. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling appreciative and I'm expressing it to you. So there's, 3:00 in the afternoon, you come into me and you say, hey, that goal we had, the sales goal that we had that we were hoping we'd get to by September. Well, here it is, August 1st, and we're going to exceed it. So we're going to kill that goal by the end of the year. A lot of managers think, I already told Wanda how great she was 3 hours ago, so I don't really need to give her any more love here, right? So, but the thing is that if we understood that you're doing all this so that you would get appreciation, right? That you would get that recognition and that if I give it to you, you'll continue to behave in the way you're behaving, which is exactly what I want. You will go, I love you. How are you going to keep coming in all day with these messages? Like, you're amazing. I'm so glad I hired you. And being willing to express it and not holding back because we have this perverse belief that Wanda's going to take advantage of me if I thank her again. She's going to skate.
Right. So ask, how are you doing? Listen to the answer, mean the question, not the perfunctory question. Know something about each person individually. You didn't say that, I'm throwing it in. Do some social hours so that the team is connected with each other during the workday, not after the workday, because it's good for team productivity at the end of the day. And 4, show appreciation. Pretty simple tactics, pretty straightforward.
If we execute them and do them all. Yep, exactly.
Yep. Yep. And by the way, for everybody, even the ones you don't absolutely love the most on your team, because what you're going to do is get more out of them as well, get more engagement out of them. Mark, what a great conversation. My guest today, Mark Crowley. Mark, if people wanted to find you, where should they look for you?
It's funny. There's another Mark Crowley out there, and people keep emailing him because I had to add a C when I wrote my book. Okay, so he's like getting annoyed. So it's markccrowley.com. All roads lead to me there. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter. Everything's Mark C. Crowley.
So funny thing, I have the same thing with my name. There's another very famous accounting professor called Wanda Wallace, and people always get us mixed up. So I often put in Wanda T for exactly that same reason. I know the phenomena. All right, Mark, thank you. The book we've been talking about today is The Power of Well-Being. Highly recommended. I thought it was very useful, very insightful. Please send us your comments. We'd love to hear from you. You can do that on any of my websites, outofthecomfortzone.com. And I'd like to tell you we have a brand new YouTube channel called outofthecomfortpod.com. So if you want to see actually how Mark and I are talking to each other in real time and our gestures and body language, go check us out there. And you can also see some short clips about the show. Join us next week for another episode in Getting Out of Your Comfort Zone.